Hi, I'm Amber Smith, author, educator, and public speaker. I wanted to come in and just share with you my ideas for opening up a bookstore here in my hometown, and also to give you uh, an opportunity to get your book on the shelf. And so the steps that I am going to tell you for getting your books on my shelf is the same process that you will use for getting your book on other shelves in other bookstores. Because I know that as authors, especially for those of us that are self-published, once we get that book published and it's showing up on Amazon, uh, we generally don't know what other steps to take from that point. So that's why I wanted to come in and do a quick video to give you an idea to first start with me if you're interested in getting your books on my shelf, but also this is a process that you can use for any other independent bookstores throughout your community or in other areas. So there's unlimited potential for you to get your book moving and getting it in front of the face of your readers. Okay, so let's get started. And like I said, this I am doing because I want you to consider putting your book on my shelf in my store, and so I want to start collecting inventory for that. Now, initially, understand that the initial investment is going to come from you. So the initial investment for getting your book on the shelf is going to come from you. There is going to be some upfront investment from you. All right, so let's get started. Now, in order to get your book on the bookshelves, you must write a letter. You must write a letter and address it to the owner of that bookstore. So for you guys that will potentially consider you having your books on my bookshelf, you will address me. I don't have a name yet for my bookstore, but I will share that with you once I get all the details for my project together. So you'll address it to me and Tricia Bray Smith. But I do know that there are some other independent bookstores, and you will address it to the owner of that bookstore. Now, this may take a little research on your part by researching the independent bookstores in your community or in your state or in, around wherever you want those books to be submitted to. So it may take initially some research on your part, but I'm going to help you with the basic details of, after you've done your research, getting it to the bookshelves. So you're writing a letter to me. My name is Tricia Bray Smith. The address that you can send that to is 1361 North 4160 Road, Hugo, Oklahoma 74743. So that is my address. It eliminates all the guesswork out of where you're going to send your product in your letter to. All right, so the details in your letter. First, you're going to introduce yourself, who you are. So you want the bookstore owner to know a little bit about who you are and what product you have. So for instance, I am Tricia Bray Smith. I am an author, educator, and public speaker. I am the author of Recreating a Better Me, Time to Talk, and Struggling to Forgive. My books can be found on Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. So give the bookstore owner a little bit about who you are and what it is you do, and maybe even a little more detail about how long you've done it, or a little background about your platforms. So then once you decided which books, because I know that most of us are authors of more than one book, and so it's a good idea if we have more than one book. That does make us more credible, and so sometimes we want to share copies of all of our books, and so that's completely up to you. But what I'd like you to do at that point is, if you're doing more than one book, like I would be sending all 3 of my books, and I have copies of 2 of them here. I'm going to give a little description of both of my books. So I'm then going to break my letter down to tell about what each one of those books include, a description of it, and what they talk about. I am going to discuss with the bookstore owner in the contents of my letter who my target audience is for the product. So for my books, my target audience is for women who are between the ages of 40 and 65 years old. That is my target audience. These are the people who I target, and these are the people that I want my books into the hands of. Okay, so what that allows the bookstore owner to see is, does the customers that come in their bookstore, does this book, or is this book a good fit for the customers that they draw in from time to time? And it also allows them an opportunity to maybe pull in or generate more potential customers, because now they have a book or a product that will pull in a different type of audience. So it's important that you know, and that you include in the details of your letter, who or what your target audience is for your product. Okay, so other details you want to include in your letter is to inform the bookstore owner how their customers will benefit from your product. You want to inform the bookstore owner in the letter how his customers or her customers will benefit from your product. What emotion will be evoked from reading your book or from your product? How will they feel? How will their lives be better? So it is very important that you do this, because in a bookstore, when a customer is looking for a book, when the customer comes in looking for a book, they may have questions. They may come in with a specific need. And the more the bookstore owner or the people in the bookstore know about your book, the better they're able to market and promote it and get it into the hands of the people that really need it. So this is why it's so important that you think about what your product is and be able to communicate with that bookstore owner how that book or that product is going to benefit the customers that come in and shop in their bookstore. Okay, then now that you have provided the bookstore owner with the details of how their customers are going to benefit from your book, it allows them at this point to explore marketing strategies for your product. So in my bookstore, I plan to not only display your book, but also to display a little detailed framework about what this book is, a little bit about the author. So I'm really wanting to promote your brand. So the more information you give me here in these three areas here, the more I'm going to be able to provide a good marketing strategy or a good table that displays your product and what it is that you do. Also, you may want to provide in there details about how me or how I, the bookstore owner, can get more copies of your book for the bookstore. Okay, so you have to come up with a marketing strategy or marketing ideas to discount your book. So we're got to think wholesale at this point. Because if your book costs $10, you can't sell your book to me for $10 because therefore I'm not making any money for my bookstore for your product. So you have to provide details and tell the bookstore owner how you plan to partner up with them in getting more of your books on the bookshelf if the books you have or the books that you are going to submit to the bookstore begins to sell. Because if your books are selling, then the bookstore owner is going to want to put more of your products on the shelf. So you have to think now as a wholesaler. So if your book costs you so much money, like for instance, my book may cost me $3 and some change to get it to me. Okay, so I got to think at this point, how much am I going to sell my book for to the bookstore owner who is requesting more of my books to come on the shelf? So now I have to think in terms of a partnership, because not only am I going to want to make money, but the bookstore owner is going to want to make money from my product as well. So you really have to begin to think from a business perspective. How much can you stand to make from each book sold to the bookstore owner, and how much is the bookstore owner going to potentially generate from selling your books as well? So it becomes then a partnership. So you must think in terms of selling your product wholesale, because you want to make money, but you also want to know that the person that is selling your book on their shelf has the potential to also make money. So what I'm going to do is these two books here sell on Amazon and other places for $10 each. So for $10 each. So this is the details that I'm going to be giving the bookstore owner. These books sell for $10 each. And for you to get more copies of these books on your shelf, I'm going to sell them to you for $5.50. So for $5.50 per book, with a minimum of 10 books. So he has to order a minimum of 10 books to get more of the books at $5.50 each, right? Then I'm going to send you more. You can get more copies of my book. So I have just made a deal and provided the bookstore owner details on what they sell my book for. So I'm telling them what they sell my book for, how much they can get it for, and that generally gives the bookstore owner an idea of how much the bookstore is going to make for each book they sell. So if the bookstore owner is getting my book for $5.50 each, and they sell the book for $10, then you do the math, and then you can understand how much the bookstore is going to make as a result of selling my books. Okay? So I hope that helps you understand that it becomes a partnership at that point. You cannot sell your book for $10 to the bookstore and expect that the bookstore owner is going to generate a revenue or going to benefit for selling your book on the shelf, because they won't at that point. So you have to really think about what's important and how you can create a win-win situation, not only for you, but for the bookstore as well. Because what the bookstore owner is doing is using their platform to generate more eyes on your product. So it is a partnership, and this is the way you have to look at it, guys. So you're not going to get as much from the bookstore, selling your books to the bookstore, as you would with just selling your book independently. But you have the potential for selling more of your product and having a more steady stream of income by creating this partnership with the independent bookstore owner. So as you decide what your marketing strategy is for the partnership, and letting this bookstore owner know how they can get more copies of your product, especially those that are selling. Some may sell more than others. And you want them to be able to already have an idea of what it's going to cost them and what they can profit for getting more of your books on the shelf. And so with that, in the letter, you also have to provide your contact information. So your contact information on how they can reach you, and make this process for getting more books on their shelves as easy as possible. So this could be as simple as an email address and just sending you an email to say, I need 10 more copies of your book, Recreating a Better Me. And uploading or having a pay link that they can send the money right to. Like for me, I have a pay link of PayPal. So I would say paypal.me/Antrisha Bray. That's the link you use to send me the money for 10 books at $5.50 each. So then they're able to upload me that $55 and request for me in that email 10 more books of Recreating a Better Me. And then all I'm doing is getting those books together and going to the post office and sending it off. Okay, directly to them, because we already have this partnership, we already have this agreement, and we know that the address and all that information we need to know to get the book or the books back to the bookstore owner. And so we want this process to be as easy and painless as possible, so that the bookstore continues to be supportive and continues to form marketing strategies for my book, but also it just makes that relationship so much better that if I order a book from you on Monday, then I'm not having to wait 3 or 4 weeks to get more of your books on my shelf, especially when customers are coming in to look for your product. So with that being said, you need to make sure that you keep a supply of books on hand. Okay, you need to keep a supply of books on hand. So with me, I have a tote that sits here right beside me. I have a tote on wheels that I keep right here beside me, and I keep any number of my books in that tote on hand. So what that does is when I'm getting ready to market my book, or when people are wanting copies of my book, I have some already on hand. And I keep a certain number of each book on hand. And when those books get low, then I reorder my author copies at my discounted price, and I restock my selections here at home. So when someone wants copies of my books, or when I'm getting ready to send out copies of my books to potential bookstore shelves, then I already have a good supply on hand. So that is important information for you to know as authors, is that you want author copies on hand. You want them kept in a storage that's good and safe, so that when you get ready to send your product out, there's no delay time. There's no back order time. You already have them, and you have them ready to go. Especially if you submit your books to me and you say in the agreement or in your letter that I have to order a minimum of 10 at a time at that particular price. So if I have to order a minimum of 10 at a time when I go to get more books from you, then you need to have at least 10 of each of your products on hand. Okay, and so this is important. And so what if you send this letter to 5 different bookstores? So if you send that letter to 5 different bookstores, and we all have to order a minimum of 10 to get your books restocked on our shelves, then you better have 50 in your stockpile right at home, so that when we reach out, then you already have books that you can send to us. Now, on the other hand, when you order your author copies, if you don't choose to keep that selection at home, you can order your author copies and from your Amazon or from your publishing company, and have them sent directly to the bookstore owner. Now, you can potentially do that, but what I find is that when you do that, there is no guarantee of the time lapse that it's going to take you from getting your book from that order to the bookstore in a good enough time without having to pay additional shipping. In which, if you have to pay that additional shipping cost, the cost of the shipping to get it there faster may cost so much more that you're really not going to profit anything. You're really not going to profit much at all. So you have to think about that. So you do have an option of just, instead of ordering the copies and having them on hand at home, that you can when the bookstore owner asks for more copies, you can just order it directly and have it sent directly to the bookstore owner from wherever you purchase your print of your books from. But there could be a possible delay in when those books arrive, up to 2 or 3 weeks. Okay, so you have to decide how you're going to do that going forward. So as you are including your contact information, remember that you guys are now entering into a partnership and an agreement. And so it's important that you provide that bookstore owner as much detail of how they can contact you and how that you can possibly get more books. Now, along with this letter that you are writing and sending to the bookstore owner, you need to include a minimum of 3 copies of your product. So a minimum of 3 copies of your product. So if I'm going to request that 2 of my books go on your shelf, and I'm giving you details about my books, then I'm sending a minimum of 3 of each of my books with the letter that I am submitting to the bookstore owner. So what that does is it allows the owner to get a copy of your book and to be able to read it to ensure that there is a good fit for their bookstore. But it also allows them a opportunity to begin to put your product on the shelf to see whether or not it's going to sell. So that's why I said that the initial investment is going to come from you, because what you're doing, if I have 2 books that I'm submitting, then this is my initial investment to that big bookstore. So send a minimum of 3 of your books, each book, to the bookstore along with your letter. Now, a minimum of 3. My suggestion, my personal suggestion, is you send 5 to 7 copies of each of your book along with the letter. Now, why do I say 5 to 7 copies? Because if your book is going to sell and it begins to draw the attraction of the customers, then if I have 5 to 7 books on the shelf, then that allows the bookstore owner to say, oh, okay, this book is selling. So I have 5 to 7 copies, I only have 2 left. I know that the customers that are coming in are interested in this product, and I don't want to run out. So if 3 have already sold, then I have a few more, and I need to get in contact with the author so that I can order more copies to get more of these copies on the shelf. Now, if you only send the minimum of 3, which is all that is required, a minimum of 3, if 2 of the customers come in and buy your book, then your book is no longer on the shelf. If a young lady comes in and she wants to buy the book for herself, but also wants to gift the book to someone else, there's nothing else for them to see. So nobody knows that your book is really there, especially if the bookstore owner hasn't completed the copy of for themselves yet, if they intend on putting it on the shelf. So you want to have that flexibility of knowing and give that bookstore owner a great idea of whether or not your book is a good fit for their bookstore. So therefore, the initial investment comes from you, but what it does is it gets your book moving, and it gets your book in the face of more and more readers. Because as independent book authors and as authors all together, people don't really know us. And it's not that they can't benefit from what we have, but how can they benefit unless we get our products in their faces and that we give them details about how our book or how our product is going to benefit them? Because at the end of the day, It's good to have a product, but it's even better when we can get our product moving and into the face of the people that can benefit from it most. Now, I've done this tutorial for getting your books on the shelf, particularly on my bookshelf. So if you're interested in getting your books on my bookshelf in my new bookstore that I am planning, go ahead and start getting your letter together and start getting your products together. Think about the plan for partnership with me and submit your letter to me and the contact information so that I can reach back out to you. Okay? Now, you may not have a book. You may not be an author. Maybe you sell custom hair bands, or maybe you sell custom cups or something like that. Or maybe you even have custom accessories that go along with your book product that you also want to submit along with your book. And that's okay if you have that. Include those products also with your letter and in your marketing strategy for getting your stuff on my shelves. So like for me, with my books, if I wanted to send along also t-shirts that I sell that have quotes from my books on those shirts that go along with the marketing strategy for my books, then I would also include a shirt or two, or a cup or two, or a tote of two, just as to give the bookstore owner more idea of what it is that I do in the products that I have. Now, they may or may not want to include that in their bookstore, but for me, with my bookstore, yes, I'm looking at books, but I'm also looking at other products to include to generate an overall atmosphere of promoting your brand as an author and entrepreneur. So if you have products that you want to submit, remember the initial investment is on you, but create a partnership agreement with me, the bookstore owner, that would make it a win-win situation for the both of us moving forward. So again, I am in the initial process of getting my bookstore together. I haven't come up with a name for my bookstore yet, but if you would like to, this is something that you would like to do, and you would like to partner with me and get your books on my shelf, now is a good time to begin to get your letter together and get copies of your book together and get ready to send that to me. Again, you will send it to Tricia Bray Smith, 1361 North 4160 Road, Hugo, Oklahoma 74743. Again, that is Tricia Bray Smith, 1361 North 4160 Road, Hugo, Oklahoma 74743. I appreciate you taking out the time to check out this video and learning how to get your books on bookstore shelves. Remember, this applies for any independent bookstore across the country. It may initially take a little research on your part, but for you to get the details and start here with my bookstore that I am planning to open and in the early planning stages of it, this is the steps that you need to take to get it into my bookstore. And you can take this information and apply it to bookstores wherever you see your product on the shelf. Good luck to you, and God bless you.